I don't want to get taken advantage of. I don't want to look like a fool or have my emotions so attached to something when they might not necessarily be ready. You know, we're all individuals at the end of the day. So transparency to me is key, and boundaries.
On the Beyond Dating podcast today, we had our guest Roxy, and she told us all about setting boundaries and expectations with your partners. And our sponsor for today's episodes is Beyond, the newest dating app in town. Check it out at datebeyond.co.
I was chanting on your balcony naked as fuck earlier, I'm not gonna lie. Until your neighbor from the 2 doors down came out. She was a woman.
What did you say?
She didn't say anything to me, but I was definitely butt ass naked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was on your balcony, on your couch thing, butt ass naked. Not gonna lie.
Thank you for making me
Yeah, sorry.
Damn.
Yeah, I was just the sun was so nice out there. I was like, let me just lay out here for a second. It was way too cold in your apartment.
So Roxy, welcome to Miami. So excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Today, I wanted to, just get a little bit of background on you and your dating life, how you interact with men and women in your life. So you want to kick it off and give us some background knowledge on all about you.
Definitely. So I consider myself a bisexual. I definitely like women. I've had maybe 2 relationships with women before, and the emotional aspect about women scare me a little bit, so I've never 100% committed to a woman. But the sexual part about women is what really attracts me and really turns me on. So I've been dating more men lately. And I've been trying to find a man that is as open as I am, in a sense where they're very confident in their sexuality, still a man, and still very much into me. We have our own personal language, love language, where we could still go out into the world and be sexy and be who we are individually and uniquely, but at the same time still have that intimacy between us that nobody can interfere with. So it's a special thing that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. So do you see yourself ideally looking for a male partner long-term or female partner long-term or both? What does that look like?
I definitely want a male partner in the future. I want to be able to actively look maybe for different girlfriends, maybe for different situations, but I definitely want the long-term part to be with a male aspect. I feel more comfortable that way.
I think that's really interesting how a lot of bisexual women will say they would like to end up with a male, or they like dating men because of the, I guess, traditional relationship styles and ways that men are supposed to treat a woman, because
Right.
it's nice to be pampered and treated like a princess.
Exactly.
And with women, I know at least for me, I'll be more dominant with women
Every time, me
than
too.
with men.
Every time. I happen to be the same exact way. Even with my girlfriends, my friends, I'm very much, not the mother, but very much the male, masculine energy of the group. But I enjoy being that way. I'm definitely more of a caretaker. I'm a Pisces, so I guess that comes naturally.
So growing up, did you always know that you were bisexual? Did you grow into it over time? How did that come around?
Yeah, I definitely did not know that I was a bisexual. I grew up in a very traditional family. So I had my mom and my dad the whole time. My parents are still together. They've been married maybe 29 years. So I know what it's like to see that type of relationship growing up. So I always wanted that. I was actually engaged. I was engaged for 4 years. And I was with this gentleman for a long time. I knew him in high school. I was ready to commit, have a family, settle down, have a home with him. And our lifestyles, our reality just didn't line up. So he was a little too vanilla for me. And that's okay. There was things that I still had in my life that I wanted to explore. And I think that's what is very important to me. with the whole bisexual part of me. It's hard to describe, even though I'm not doing it for the male gaze, if that makes any sense, because there's times where a woman being involved for me is what kicks it up that extra notch and just makes everything so pleasant. But not a lot of men are super comfortable with that sometimes. So that's where like my traditional background kind of, you know, evolves in a sense, and I'm able to open up that part of me where I'm like, okay, I know what it's like to be a woman. You're a woman and I'm super attracted to you. You're super sexy and you know how to make me feel good. And that's such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing, and it makes me want more of that in my life.
Oh, amazing. So tell me how being engaged has changed the way you date or seek out relationships.
So being engaged, obviously you belong to one person, and being super committed in that sense and that loyalty you have with that one person, it definitely transferred off to my, like when because I've been single now for 3 years almost. So single life, you definitely have to have more boundaries than obviously when you're in a committed relationship, engaged. You're sharing a lot more things with them. So your boundaries are not as present with them. You've dropped a lot of your boundaries. So now that I'm single, I find myself having more and more boundaries because I don't want to get taken advantage of. I don't want to look like a fool or have my emotions so attached to something when they might not necessarily be ready. You know, we're all individuals at the end of the day. So transparency to me is key in boundaries now that I'm a single woman.
How do you share your boundaries with your partners? When does that come up in the relationship? And how do you like to come across that topic?
It should be the first thing that you talk about, I think, when you're entering a relationship with anybody. Boundaries are super, super important. I think there's different types of boundaries, physical, internal, even material boundaries that you have to have with individuals when you first get to know them. So when you first get to know somebody, obviously you're not sharing your money, your time, your assets with that person right away until you get to know them. And even your physical boundaries, like you have to know how you feel and constantly ask yourself if this is okay. And obviously it's all going to change with emotions and your day-to-day routine. All those type of boundaries will change, and that's okay. Change is completely normal and fine, but these are the questions you definitely have to ask yourself from the very beginning of the relationship, because if you don't start with those boundaries from the beginning, people are just going to walk all over you or get away with things that you normally wouldn't feel comfortable with, and then boom, that relationship's done.
Is being able to express your boundaries with something that came naturally, or was it a learned behavior over time?
Definitely learned behavior. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and I let a lot of people almost walk over me, I feel like. And as a woman, we tend to do that a lot. We tend to be like yes men, and we tend to, want to be that type of woman that just nurtures and cares for, and that's super hard. It's definitely trials and tribulations when it comes to boundaries. For me, at least, it was a learning experience because I was never that way. I was always very fun, and I want to, get to know this person, and right away I was like, okay, so what now? And now it's like, okay, I'm confidently lost. I'm okay with who I am as a person, and these are my boundaries. This is how it's going to be for now. If I see the relationship going further, obviously those boundaries are dropped a little bit more, and you can start sharing more experiences with that person.
I think that's really interesting that you bring up the point of how your boundaries can change. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else to add? Like how has your boundaries changed over the course of your life, your dating life, and where do you think you'll see them going in the future?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I remember when I was engaged, I was such a jealous girl. I was so jealous. That monogamy kind of does that to you. As a woman, you sit there and you're like, do I not look okay? Is she hotter than I am? Is my boyfriend looking at her? Like, you kind of internalize these things and you become this like jealous person that was not there before. So my boundaries definitely have made me change in a sense where I feel more confident about myself. I feel more secure about myself now that I know what it is that I want, you know, because it changes. It's a very drastic change. And now that I'm comfortable and secure about myself, those jealous feelings don't arise as much. And I think that's something that us women, we have to really work on, because you walk into a room and there's many beautiful women. Why is it that women on women will attack each other just because of the way they look? That has to do with insecurity, I feel like. So it's important for us women to work on this, like, I'm secure about who I am. I think you're gorgeous too. We're all so beautifully individual and unique. Like, these are the things that you want to expose to the world, that beauty of uniqueness, you know?
So do you have any tips for anyone looking to get more comfortable expressing their boundaries with their partners or with friends or anyone in life?
Everything is very individual to who you are as a person. I think asking questions to yourself is very, very important. So just simple questions like, am I okay with this person touching me the way they are? Do I feel comfortable inviting them to my home? What is the relationship going to look like in the future because I allowed myself to do this or to do that? Those little questions that you ask yourself are going to bring you to more of a self-awareness where you're able to feel comfortable. You know, even there's you know, a big thing where if you don't feel comfortable with your partner, how are you going to be comfortable sharing your dreams, your beliefs, all those things? And that's super important for an actual real relationship, a connection between two people. Super important. So I encourage to always ask yourself questions and always be self-aware of what you think is okay.
I love that.
Definitely.
So when sharing with a partner, do you have any current boundaries that you would like to share with people right now?
Definitely. So I like to call it material boundaries. You know, I've had those instances where I gave too much and then you kind of feel taken advantage of. Material boundaries are super important from the very beginning. You don't want to overextend. And in that sense, I've had problems before where I'm like, why do all my exes owe me money? Like, that's not okay. And I started understanding, okay, it's because from the beginning I allowed this and I allowed that. Material boundaries are super important in that sense because I'm a very sharing person. I'm the oldest child, so I always had to share with my two younger siblings, always. So I'm so okay with it. But not everybody's going to be having that same heart as you. So it's super important to establish that from the very beginning. And as time goes by, it can change. You know, life is ever changing. So you definitely have to be able to be adaptable.
What are some tips for being adaptable in this modern, crazy dating world that we're living in today?
Right. I feel like, you know, you have to take it day by day, step by step. It's always important to have goals, you know, what it is that you want for your future, but you can't be so dead set if something doesn't happen to go your way. Everything should be a lesson and a teacher to your life and to what it is that you want overall. But even what you want overall can change as well. So I think it's super important to always be open-minded, especially in this modern world that we live in. Not everything is right and not everything is wrong. You kind of have to find those like gray areas because it's not just black and white. And you have to, you know, see what you individually are okay with and what pleases you. And there's so much beauty in the world that I feel like everybody should experience. There shouldn't be such a bubble that you're in all the time, but it's healthy to have that bubble. So again, it's all individual. It's important for people to feel and connect the way they want and the way life kind of experiences will teach you. So
On the topic of being open-minded, how do you like to define the word open-minded?
for for me, open-minded is trying new things. It's getting outside of your comfortability. And being comfortable can be a very dangerous thing. You know, you can be comfortable to the point where there's no elevation in your life. And putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is super important for you to elevate in your life. And that's what open-minded means to me, is having those uncomfortable conversations, is putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, not dangerous situations, but just uncomfortable situations that pushes you outside of your bubble to kind of react the way you are going to react, and then maybe even work on that reaction.
Do you have an example or something that happened to you specifically that was a turning point for you, that was an uncomfortable situation or an uncomfortable point that pushed you forward in life, that elevated you?
Definitely. I have so many uncomfortable situations I've been in. But, you know, we all do that to ourselves, you know. I think, let me see. I'm like, I've been in so many uncomfortable situations. Let me think. So there's been times where I've been around individuals that are so influential and have so much talent and so much, you know, people look up to these people. And you can't help but to sit there and analyze and internalize these thoughts. Being uncomfortable kind of takes you away from being in your head as much, and you're a little bit, I mean, for me, I try to be more self-aware in those situations. So I learn from these uncomfortable situations to not always be so about me and what I'm doing wrong. Because, you know, that critical analyzing can even be unhealthy for myself. I'll put myself down a little too much. So I feel like it's important to just be yourself, constantly have a light, open heart with things, and not try to get yourself too worked up for what could have happened or what if. You know, we always sit there and think, what if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? I think it's important to just do what feels right. Later on in life, if it wasn't necessarily what you wanted to do, now you have that experience to kind of go off of. And now for the next time, it could be something that's different and you can make it your own. And yeah, I wish that for my next relationship, someone that is okay to go through the trials and tribulations of life and not be super judgmental if something doesn't go necessarily our way.
So what does your next relationship look like?
I know. I mean, I try not to think about it too much, because what do they say? Don't go out looking for love. You have to let it come to you. So I'm super, super excited to meet new people and to interact and know their individual outlook on life and see if they align. So if it aligns with who I am and my reality of life, and we happen to be super, like, the sexual chemistry is crazy and all that good stuff, I look forward to being with something like that.
Do your boundaries change in the bedroom versus out in public?
Oh my gosh, yes. So when you're in public, it's such a funny thing, but I'm super, like, one of those people that get turned on by, like, public affection. So I grew up in a traditional background, so I don't necessarily want to be like this super freak in the streets, more freak in the sheets. So I in the bedroom, for me, I'm like open to a certain extent. There'll be things I'm like, absolutely not, I'm not doing this. But there's things as well that I'm like, okay, I never have done this, but I would be okay to try it. So I'm not super closed off to that, but definitely, like, outside of the bedroom, there's a certain path that I definitely want to follow, because as women, you know, in sexuality, a lot of the times it's deemed as wrong, and, you know, we shouldn't be too sexy because it makes us look like whores, or it's just not right, and people sit there and judge you, or whatever the fact may be. I'm working on my professionalism outside of the bedroom, and then that way I can focus on my inner goddess in the bedroom. So those are my two different ends of the spectrum completely. So I like my privacy.
What is that like, juggling, trying to portray as a professional woman out in public, in the streets, but then also wanting to be the sexual goddess in the sheets?
Yeah.
How do you balance that?
So I don't ever want to portray something that I'm not. I feel like I am professional. I feel like I am a boss babe. I feel like this is who I am as a person. And the sexual part, I feel like it's earned. I feel like it's not something that you just dive into right away, like, ooh, this is me, here I am. No, I think it's definitely something that's earned. Once I understand who you are as a person and your values and all that, then I feel comfortable to be more sexual with you, to explore that other aspect of me. But it's going to take time. And I think that's such a beautiful thing with women, like particularly, because that mystery behind that is so sexy. It's so sexy. It makes you look at that woman like, wow, I want to know. I want to know.
I definitely want to know more. I have a question. This is my why not question. So
Okay.
Cheers to this question.
Cheers.
What is something that you would like to try that you're like, why not? You didn't think originally, maybe in the past you'd be open to it, but you want to try it in the future.
Okay, so I've been a unicorn before. And if for those of you guys that don't know what being a unicorn is, it's being with a couple and, sharing that experience with that couple. I never thought I was going to be necessarily okay with that, but the more I've interacted with these couples, they have such a beautiful, it's almost like a ceremony, like a love ceremony going. And I'm just like, wow, this is really, really sexy. I want to do something like this. So I'm definitely open to trying this new kind of vibe without obviously messing up my relationship. Because sometimes you can mess up a relationship with a man by being too open or too okay with things. That's why boundaries are important as well. And communication, of course.
How does the setting boundaries happen when you're experiencing with other couples as a single woman? And what is the difference when you're experiencing, maybe you're in the couple and you're experiencing
Oh yeah,
a
that's a
unicorn?
whole different territory. When you're with a couple, you definitely have to be mindful of their boundaries and what they like. But honestly, my experience has been so wonderful being a unicorn. Oh my God, it's like I'm getting all the love I ever wanted, just me. And I'm sure they talk about this amongst themselves, what's okay and what's not okay. And I think that's necessary. So if I were to have that relationship with my man, obviously we would talk about, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. I don't want you having the number. I don't want you to reach out to her afterwards. Or it's okay to do this. Maybe this will be like our actual girlfriend. Whatever that looks like is what you guys should communicate with and what you guys should definitely speak about and come to the conclusion or even a compromise with.
Nice. Compromise. That's very interesting. I think that's kind of important because we're all compromising in a way. Like, we can all still get what we want, but we all have to give and take in our relationships, whether it's sexually or physically or emotionally. There's always going to be a balance, some sort of compromise.
Definitely. And sometimes how are you going to know that you don't like it unless you try it?
I always say I'll try anything twice because the first time I'm nervous.
Right.
I don't know if I like it. I have to get the full experience. Try it a second time.
That's a good motto to have. Gotta try it twice and to see if you like it or not.
What's your motto? Do you have anything?
I don't. I just feel like being open and uncomfortable, even though it sounds weird, that is definitely what I'm trying to do. Right? I say this all the time. Gary Danko says this all the time. I'm sorry, not Gary Danko. Gary Vaynerchuk. He says this all the time, where it's like you innovate or you die. Whether it's a company or whether it's your own personal life, I think innovation is so, so important. I'm a tech person. I do engineering. I like cars, all that. So that's a part of me that I'm like, okay, I have this logical kind of mind. So I want to be open. I don't want to be so critical at thinking and overanalyzing everything and, having a whole list to check off. I don't like that feeling. I want to just, as my life is going, I want to be able to move throughout life and its experiences.
Wow. So tell me more about how you got into cars and being a tech girl, because I feel like I don't meet a lot of girls, at least here in Miami, who are car girls.
Yeah, so I went to school for high performance automotive and alternative fuels. I got into the whole car aspect because of my dad and my grandpa. They're supercar people. And I did engine building competitions, and that's how I ended up going to college. And that's also another reason why professionalism is super important in my life, because I feel like I stand for something. You know, women, we're not super into the industry. We're definitely a small percentage of the majority of men that are in this industry. So I feel like I definitely have something to stand for. And I want to be able to be still open and sexual the way I am, but at the same time still send out a message that, hey, it's okay to be open and sexual. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. So, yeah.
When you're working in this sort of male-dominated space, like, how did you set your boundaries with your coworkers? What was that process like?
Oh, yeah. It was a long process, but mostly it's kind of easy once the talent kind of speaks for itself. I feel like if I could do all the same things you can, we can sit here and we can have an actual intellectual conversation about, you know, how you feel this is right and how you feel this is wrong when it comes to like working on engines or anything of that nature. Once they see that aspect of me, it's actually more or less them praising me for it because I'm a woman. So I'm like, yeah, we can do this. I've had a lot of times where I've even beat men at, you know, building engines or anything of that nature. And, you know, either they're mad or they give me, you know, the props that I deserve. So it's like, it's a taboo thing, but it's definitely something we can move past. And I look forward to always being that push, you know? So yeah, here I am now being a little bit more sexual and open to who I am as a person, but still not forgetting my backgrounds and my passions in life.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. This has been an amazing, insightful conversation for me, and I hope for everyone else too.
Thank you so much, honey.